How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Sobering Up. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is Matt, and he was kind enough to come on the show today. And, we're just going to kind of talk about some things and see where the conversation takes us. And yeah, we'll just go from there. Matt, if you want to tell me kind of a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey Braden, thanks for having me on the show. First off, really good to meet you virtually in person here. And yeah, we're doing a show swap. I can't wait to have you on my show. So thank you for having me on. Right now, I have going on. I am a recovery coach, sound therapist. The recovery program I have is at recoveryroadmap.me. That's also my Instagram handle. And yeah, I do the podcast. So I do Beyond Recovery, as I mentioned that you're going to be on as well. And that's pretty much what I got going on at the moment. So.
Okay. What kind of started like what was the thought process behind, kind of starting those type of ventures? Like what kind of led to that?
For sure, yeah. So, I've been doing the same job for over 20 years. I got hired at like a local grocery chain up here in Canada. It's like a regional grocery chain, like Western Canada. And I got hired when I was 16 and, I did the part-time bakery closer to assistant store manager everywhere in between, for the past 23 years and was just finding myself very unfulfilled by the job. I just felt like I had this like intuition that I wasn't doing what I'm supposed to do. And you know what? That was uncovered by me sobering up, right? So like I'm fairly certain that if I had just stayed drinking and numbing that feeling that that voice inside me going, hey, like you're meant to do something different here, and I was just continually flushing it with beer. I quite honestly probably could have done it for the rest of my life, the 15 years, but soon I'd been by the time I quit the job, coming up on 3 years sober, which was this past January. And, I, at that point, I had really been looking at my life as far as anytime I would think, okay, I'd say to myself, like, all I have to do is this job for the next 15 years and then I can retire, right?
Mhm.
And every time I would think that, I would just have this like contraction and just like feel like the walls are closing in and this feeling of dread. And I'm like, that's not right. And then so I had this just certain things would show up like for these certain YouTube videos that I would watch or movies, and there was like the whole like hero's journey thing, or somebody that's like betting on themselves would really give me this like emotional reaction of like, I would start kind of tearing up and getting emotional, and I was like, okay, something is here, so I have to pursue this. So I took 6 months off last year, so 2021, just to reset and just kind of figure out what this feeling was inside of me. I'd never really taken anything beyond like 2 weeks off over that 23 years. So, and I remember the morning one when I woke up, I had this like voice. I have inner dialogue as anybody does, but this voice inside my head was very loud, and it felt like it wasn't even mine. It was this, and it just said, "You're not going back." I was like, "Ooh, interesting." That's like morning one, right? And yeah, so the next 6 months, I was just doing a lot of self work and self development, and I ended up going down the coaching route. I ended up getting a few coaching certifications, and just realizing, I did the whole. I think it's like John Lee Dumas. He's like an entrepreneur and a podcaster, and he has this book that I listened to, and it was about like, okay, on one column write down everything that you're good at, and then one column write down your passions, and just try to like link them all up and see what this might help you find your calling if you're kind of uncertain. So, and I definitely found the thing that I liked about my job, my previous job, the best was the fact that I had all that body of work and that experience. I was in that realm that I was like coaching and mentoring people, and I did enjoy that. So that's where the coaching just seemed like a natural next thing to pivot into. And so we got the coaching certifications as sort of the more generic, not generic, but general life coach thing. And if you know anything, anybody that knows anything about like starting a business, it's good to have a real niche, especially when you're kind of getting your feet wet and nobody knows you quite yet. So you want to find a spot where you're very specific about the people that you serve. And it's going to be potentially a small pocket of people, or at least a lot less than trying to serve everybody, right?
Mhm.
So that is, so I'm like, okay, well, what can I combine with that? Well, of course, my life experience of overcoming an addiction and being in active recovery, and getting to the point I'm like, quote unquote, beyond recovery, like my podcast suggests. and tying that in with the coaching. So that's where I got into the sobriety and recovery coaching, was from that. And so basically, after the 6 months off, I went back for 4 months, and I'm glad I did, to my old job. And it was kind of like a spot to just put a bow on everything that I'd done, say some proper goodbyes, realize that the new me and this old me, couldn't. I thought there was going to be a degree of overlap where I could continue to work there and then also work on my coaching. And I found out very quickly that I was a very different person over that last 6 months. And then to go back, it felt like I was living two. It reminded me a little bit of like, being in addiction, where I'm living two lives and trying to awkwardly combine them. And I just wanted this feeling of wholeness and oneness, that I'd been lacking in my life up to that point. So I decided to pull the plug on the job, which was, simultaneously terrifying and like, yeah, let's do this, like exciting, right? And yeah, that was this past January. And so since then, I've been doing full time, just working on the coaching. So I created like an online course and community, and just had like the Dry July challenge with my first group, went through that. So there's 6 people that went through that, and we got some really great feedback from them. And yeah, and then just adding, I've been a musician since I was 16 as well. So the past 20 plus years I've been doing music, but it was also like I was always in like, a grunge rock band or like an indie rock band. And now, bringing that together, like, so I ended up getting a certification and studying, chakra healing and sound therapy music and frequency healing, and then, combining that side of things with my coaching. So then now everything is all encompassing, all in one, and it's just moving forward in the one direction. As before, I had all these like side projects and different things that I would do on the periphery in order to allow me to feel good about the job that I was not super happy doing, if you know what I mean. I'd have all these things like, I'm doing this job so I can go home and work on music, work on my band. And now it all feels like it's this collective thing, collective energy center in my body that's like authentically me, that's just moving forward in the one direction instead of all these different paths that that I've was previously on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense completely. And first, I want to say congrats on your 3 years of sobriety. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah,
And
thanks.
it's just it's super cool to see that, like, you realized you did want to go the coaching route, because that's not, at least me personally, I don't know a lot of people, that have kind of gone that route. And I think it's great that, you chose to go the coaching route and also kind of focus it on recovery and sobriety and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, yeah, I just think that's amazing. And I think the programs you have going are just great.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's even getting into the whole program thing, it was an interesting origin with that. Like, so I felt very, I felt there's I put pressure on myself over the last 6 months that I took off last year, to figure something out so I didn't have to go back. That was like and man, it really got into this like survival mode of, I intentionally saved enough money to get me through that leave of absence I took. But in the meantime, after I had been used to getting paid every Friday for 20 years,
Yeah.
that first Friday came, even though I knew it was happening, I planned for it. It felt very bizarre. It felt very strange that I didn't get paid. I was like, ooh, it kind of like I felt it in my body, and I was like, obviously I have some like money stories here that need to be addressed. Money
Yeah.
stories, I mean, like, what does money represent to me? It's like, I believe it's like an energetic thing. For some folks, it can be, just a utility. It's just money is money, right? But for me, there was definitely some self-worth there was some, the self-worth was the main thing that kind of surprised me. If I'm not making money, regardless how hard I've been working, I don't feel like I'm valued, or like I'm not valuing myself. And that's been a tricky one to get through, because everybody, like when people ask me, hey, are you doing your coaching full time? So, technically it's a kind of a two-way answer. So on one hand, yeah, like I'm putting in 60 hours a week as most folks would on a startup business, and that's fine. At this point, it doesn't necessarily feel like work. I'm enjoying it. But on the other side of it, is it paying the bills? Am I like at the money threshold that I desire or I'm working towards? Not yet. And that's fine, right? So I had a hard time having a proper answer for that. So if you were to ask me like 2 or 3 months ago, hey, do you do this full time? I'd be like, kind of that, not quite. I'm working on it. Like I'm a startup, right? And now I'm like, yeah, I am doing it full time because legit, I'm putting the hours in. Has it come to like, it's like, you know, like building a building. Like I got the foundation. I feel like I have my foundation now, and then or like in the sea, like I was talking with a few folks, like clients and just other people in general, just anybody in my inner circle, about the whole idea of like the seasons of life, right? So I feel like I've come out of my spring where it's just like this rebirth and redevelopment and all that. Now it's like summertime. It just happens to coincide with actual summertime. But it's that this is me going out and like networking and telling people about what I have, coming on podcasts like, like yours, and championing the work that I've done behind the scenes, and under the guise of the intention of bringing it to light and having it, resonate with somebody or some people, and then being able to provide a service for them, right? So that's kind of the process that it's been. And initially, I'd started a course last year just based on like the importance of creativity and like learning musical instruments, for example, or painting, and how that can help you process trauma and such. Sort of basically like an art therapy type program, right? And that's where it all started, is like the idea of like an online course was very much resonated with me at the time. I was doing a lot of Mind Valley courses and things of that nature. So that's what I was doing. So then I wanted to, I guess, mirror that and provide that back to the world, right? And so that's kind of where it came from. I was like, it'd be cool to do like a sobriety program, like online program, where it's just like each day, it's like a 30-day challenge, for example. And each of the 30 days, there's like a specific subject that's just like a 5 to 7 minute video, with the slideshow, just some like helpful quotes, or like reframing a certain something in a way that the student hasn't thought of before, and that kind of thing. I thought it was a pretty cool idea, because I'm like, man, there's not too many of those around. If you search for it, there's not too much of like there's like how to, what I mean, how to learn how to drop ship in 30 days. There's all these other like monetary, it's usually like how to make money. It's like these get rich quick
Yeah,
schemes, or
yeah.
other self-development courses, but I haven't found that there's too many like sobriety
Hmm.
courses, right? And I don't know how it's for you, but definitely for me, well, you even talked about it before we got started here. Your podcast, the energy that you're putting into your podcast has helped you stay sober, and it's like
Hmm.
a focus, right? And so that was what it was for me, and that's what I believe the course will be for people as well. It's like something to look forward to. Okay, I did this. It's food for thought that stays with you. It's a subject, for example, reframing a relapse, and that's your 5 minute video at the beginning of the day, and then that kind of echo throughout the rest of the day, and it's just food for thought, and you think about it, right? And it's in like a bite-sized 5 minute video. You start your day with it. So yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, man. And then you combine that with we got like a weekly group call we do, where it's just sort of sharing and discussing the module on the online course, and how that showed up in your life that week. And then the one-on-one coaching calls that I do, which is like a story work style coaching method. And and just the community is amazing. So we promote like daily check-ins, so everybody just like, you pick up your phone, go, okay, hi, this is Matt checking in, 2 minutes of like, this is how I'm feeling, these are what my emotions are potentially getting based upon, like just getting, it's like an awareness exercise, right? And getting yourself comfortable in front of in front of the camera, and being vulnerable. And it's so that's basically the course in a nutshell. We do like Sunday events. So there was like a yoga event, and Tai Chi. And so Sunday mornings, I basically, it was funny. What I did is like the group calls like Friday night, and then the Sunday event is bright and early Sunday morning. So really capturing that like problem drinking, the weekend, right? Give you something to look forward to at the end of the week. And then meanwhile, during the week, you can do these on your own time, the course. So it's kind of this immersive program that you can do for 30 days every day, and really jumpstart, either if it's a 30-day challenge when you're like sober curious, and it's going to work very well for you on that case. Or on the flip side, if you're just feeling a little bit complacent, or like sort of triggered, and you might be 2 years into your sobriety, and you need something to kind of supercharge and get you out of that comfort zone of your recovery and sobriety, it's perfect for that type of person as well. So you can catch everybody in that sense.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's one thing I was realizing is like when you were talking about that stuff is just like it's it's great that you have like all these, activities and like tools and like events that, take up time, because, being in sobriety and being sober, I find that like you kind of you'd rather not have a lot of dead space time where you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it's great to keep busy with all those things that, you're the program that you've created is offering and stuff like that, because it's a lot harder route to just do nothing and white knuckle it and kind of, you know what I mean? Like you kind
Yeah.
of want those activities to keep you busy. And I just, yeah, I mean, that's just like, yeah, it's great.
It's funny you mentioned the white knuckling. That's even part of one of the lessons too, right? Is like what there's a time and place for, and I'll speak from my own experience. I definitely white knuckled quite a bit, especially in my first. I did a 3 years sober from 2012 to 2015, and that was a lot of white knuckling. I had a very distinct shift spiritually as well, and I had been going to meetings, and there's a lot of other things I did, but there was also a lot of like just white knuckling, right? And it's there is time and place for that, and that's important to have that. White knuckling is like I trace it back to there's some inner discipline, and there's some, so that's what it's based off of. But man, it can be so incredibly challenging, right? And
Yeah.
if that's all you're doing, yeah, for me it's like you got to have a foundation. It's like, or so there's pillars, right? There's the community, the connection piece is massive. Like you say, taking those idle hands away. I know there's like some degrees of people saying, okay, be careful about replacing, and that's another lesson I have in the course is replacing one addiction for another. Initially, though, I believe that if you have a addictive personality like I do, I needed somewhere for that. And the law of conservation of energy, that energy's got to go somewhere. So I started going to the gym, right? And then so, a critic of that would say, well, all you've done is transferred one addiction to the other. Well, I'm like, well, going to the gym is a hell of a lot better than slamming 8 beers after I get home from work. You know what I mean? So having said that, after you pick some better habits, that's, at least you've shifted that energy to something positive, and now we can work on the reason that you had that addiction in the first place. And that's where
Hmm.
like the one-on-one coaching calls, the group calls were amazing. And just like those daily check-in things, and like you say, it's like getting away from like the idle hands. It's an immersion course, like it's a like immersive, for
Hmm.
30 days. There's like expectations, there's accountability there, and it's that can sound kind of like pressure language, but it's not. It's actually that's part of the fun, and everybody rose to the occasion. And yeah, it was interesting. The one part that I didn't I thought would maybe fall off intermittently was the check-ins, but they were arguably the most consistent because I get in people's head. And sorry, the other thing that we do that's worth mentioning too, just in the subject of what you and I are talking about, as far as like keeping the energy and idle hands and such, is so the challenge in the 30-day challenges or 31-day, depending on the month, is we call it 30 Thrive 30. So you pick three um, activities, essentially, one based on body, one based on mind, one based on spirit. And you do 10 minutes a day of each one. So it's a 30-minute period. And you do that for the 30 or 31 days. And so, for example, it could be like reading a book. For me, I did reading a book out loud. Uh, when I read out loud, I get a little dyslexic. I've always been self-conscious about the way I read out loud. So I force myself out of my comfort zone. So I do 10 minutes of reading out loud, usually to my dogs, and they're kind of like, "What's going on?" And then 10 minutes of meditation. So just going outside and just sitting, listening to the wind in the trees, and just really trying to get as in tune with my energy as I can. And then I've done a running challenge. So I did, yeah. So that was the body, the mind, the spirit. Three things, 30 minutes for the full 31 days, and often I would do my check-in right after that. And that's just a great way to start off your morning. Watch that 5-minute video, boom, and then you go to work, and then come back home. And if there's like a group call, there's the replays you can watch. So yeah, it was a great way to and man, it was wonderful to see everybody in the community start interacting, and it was really rewarding for me to see like the friendships. And because it's like when you're leaving yourself vulnerable, and I'm sure you've experienced it when you get into like a room or something, and there's this sharing, and it's just like, man, there's no need for a persona or ego anymore, and you can just be yourself. And the relationships that you get out of like a 30-day thing versus like say a workshop, like a 2 day retreat or something. Yes, you can have this profound experience, but it's like 48 hours and then you're back to
Mhm.
reality. Whereas a 30 day is like, man, you can really see the changes in people and the relationships grow, and everybody's keeping in touch coming out of that as well, which has been really super cool as well to watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, of course, like like you said, it's totally different when it's a 30-day thing, and you are opening yourself up and people are getting to know, the real you and whatnot. It's probably relationships that you build in those in that time period that probably lasts a long time, right? And you know what I mean? And
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So that yeah, that's a great part of it. Yeah, I think it's like for me, yeah, like, I'm curious, like how far are you into your sobriety now, or this
um
stint, this current
I
one?
I just hit 3 months last week.
Nice, man.
So it's
Congrats.
I thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty new into my sobriety, and every day I'm kind of learning new things and new ways to kind of uh deal with my sobriety and make it, more enjoyable. And yeah, no, it's yeah, so 3 months, and yeah, but it's honestly, I've felt great. I felt better than I have in a very long time, so it's been good.
Dude, congrats. And then when did you start? So yeah, a little over. When was the podcast in that? Was it fairly early on?
Yeah, I would say I started this around I say I started it maybe like a month ago, maybe a
Yeah.
month
Okay, that
ago or
sounds right.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like so I was on Amazon, or yeah, I was on Amazon one day, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a microphone.
Yeah.
I was like, just I looked up some microphones, found this one, and it just was an idea that came to me kind of out of nowhere, because I really, before this, I really didn't even listen to podcasts that much.
Really?
I that's the
It's
funny
funny,
thing.
man. So like out of nowhere for you to have gotten that download or whatever it was that,
Yeah,
inspired you to do it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, maybe it was kind of a spur of the moment decision, but I'm glad I did it. And yeah, so I bought a microphone, and I was like, I like the whole idea of podcasts. Like I like that idea. So yeah, I bought this microphone and I started my account, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to dedicate my time to, kind of saying what I have to say, and kind of, sharing my experience, and, any tips that I might have for someone that's, trying to get sober or that's early in sobriety. And if that helps them, that's kind of my main goal, right? Like I like helping people. So if anybody can relate to, what I'm going through, and can find some comfort in that, or can, can take some things from what I've experienced, then that's really all I'm looking for. And like I said, yeah, it helps me maintain sobriety, and it's another tool that, I use to stay sober and kind of take up some of my free time, if so I'm not sitting there kind of with my thoughts constantly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And or on those hard days, I'll just be like, I'll just record an episode even if I'm having a bad day, and
Totally, man.
I'll
Yeah.
talk about whatever's on my mind.
Yeah.
And yeah, all this moved kind of quickly for me, but like I said, yeah, I'm happy I did it. So
Yeah, it's great. And I think there's a lot to be said for, the fact that you're doing it, you're during such an early stage of your recovery
exactly,
and
yeah.
documenting it, right? Because that's going to really resonate with a lot of folks as far as, it's just like it's so new for you, and yet, and like you say, you're doing it in an authentic way where you can, if you're having a bad day, maybe, that might be the best time to hop on there and just go, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now. Just sharing. Somebody else is going to hear that and be like, hey, like I'm almost the same length of sobriety in, and that really, I needed to hear that right now. So it's cool that you're taking it at such a, early stage of, and just like running it parallel with you. And I imagine that it gives you like not only does it give you something to do, but it gives you another level of accountability for yourself, because now you're putting yourself out there as, hey, I have sobering up podcast, so I really got to stay sober now, right? It's like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
see, that's exact. I mean, I
yeah,
thought about that the other day too. I was
yeah,
just like, I kind of set this all up for myself, and it's like, yeah, there is accountability there now to stay
right,
sober. And you know what, I'm fine with that, because
yeah,
it's just another reason for me to stay sober. Not that I have a million already to stay sober, right?
sure, yeah, totally, yeah,
So it's another reason. And Yeah, it's just helped me in a lot of ways. And it's like, yeah, it's an early stage in my sobriety. It's so it's kind of that raw stage, where I'm still every day I'm learning, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
early into it that I'm learning every single day how to deal with things and stuff like that. So
for
I mean,
sure.
yeah, if it can help anybody early in sobriety, that's kind of where I'm trying to go with this.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I dig it. I dig it.
One thing I want to go back and ask about was I forgot to mention this earlier, but when you quit your job and
Mm,
you decided to do this, try to take it to the next step and try to get it into full time and whatnot, that's a big risk, right?
yeah.
So I wanted to know kind of like how you felt going into that, like, because you said even in the beginning, right? Like when you were working that job, was that your only like source of income at the time?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was. And I came off the biggest money-making year that I'd ever had, getting close to six figures and so to pull back from that is yeah, the main thing for me was the mental. It's like I minimized the risk as much as I could. So when I quit the job, I got the 20 plus years of pension. So the majority of that has to just get rolled over into another RSP because I'm not quite of age that I can just start pulling that, and that's fine. I would want that just put away, let it grow for the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. But they did. I got a lump sum of money as well, and I was able to take that money and pay off all my monthly bills for the next year. I just did it with a lump sum, so an
Okay.
annual. So I have my monthly bills have been reduced to basically like gas money and food. I
Hmm.
refinanced my house. Luckily, I have a very supportive and amazing, fiance she was working at the same company I was. That's where we met, and she's making good coin. So she's helping with some of the finances as well, which I very much appreciate. And I said I will completely reciprocate to you sometime down the road if needed, if she needs to, whatever happens, right? So that's kind of the agreement we had, and that has relieved that whole money survival. Ugh, I got to get this done. That pressure. It's
Yeah.
relieved that pressure, and it's given me about a year, or now I guess 8 months at this point, to just figure this out, right? So I can focus on the service aspect versus just the survival. Oh my goodness, I
Of
got to get this.
course. Yeah. Right.
Sure. So
Yeah.
that was big. But to answer your question though, like as far as the mental side of things, yeah, I went through. I feel like the 6 month sabbatical I took last year was like the whole imposter syndrome, self doubt. Like who do you like? My voice would be like, who do you think you are walking away from this job? Like why are you so much? You think you're better than everybody that works there? What makes you so much better? And all these like really, it's like protective side of me that's like trying to keep me where it's safe but doing it in a derogatory way, right? Like very hard on myself. And then yeah, the whole imposter syndrome of like, you're not an entrepreneur. Nobody in our family is an entrepreneur. Like, why would you even attempt this? And so, dude, that yeah, luckily the coaching certifications I took, it's called Enlifted is the company, and it's it's came at the perfect time because as I was feeling all these feelings and going through these emotions, the whole crux of the coaching certification is dealing with it's story work. So it's dealing with those types of feelings. My imposter syndrome says type it out, read it out loud, feel the feelings, read it like at 70% speed, really let the emotion come into it, get some objectivity behind it. Take certain sentences out, pull the sentences out, the ones that are really triggering for me, read them very slowly, breathe into them, just take the time to air out these stories and be able to, just to flip them. Because, like, if they just stay in my head, they're just going to circulate and circulate and gather steam, right? But if I get them out of me and out on a Google Doc, I read it and I have a coach to help me guide through them and, go, okay, what is, when you said this, do you actually mean this? Like projections, if I'm victim stories, like working through all those and reframing everything. And as a result, I was able to work through all that, like imposter syndrome, and victimy stories that I might have had, limiting beliefs. And then as a result, coming out of that, I've cleaned up my, energy and my mental hangups and limitations and such. And that just so happens to be the coaching style that I bring to, recovery coaching, right? So, which is a huge part of my own sobriety was like the emotional sobriety, right? Like figuring out what my emotions even were before I'd be so quick to numb them out and then get angry, right? I was, I'm generally a happy-go-lucky drunk, but like when I got angry, I would be angry, right? And do the victim thing, like those fucker, excuse my language, those f those people and blah blah blah. I'd be that guy, right?
Mhm.
So I'm very Jekyll and Hyde kind of drunk, as most people are. So definitely that was my side of it. And and then I also found, I mean, what we were talking about earlier, like changing one habit to the next. I had a hard time figuring out how to figure out my own emotions and so forth. So what I would do instead of drinking, I would just distract myself, right? So if I started feeling like lonely or sad or something, oh, pick up my phone, I'm gonna look on Instagram, just go away feeling, I don't want to feel that right now, right? So I would do a lot of like distracting myself, distracting my emotions away. And that's something that just over the last year or so I'm really aware of now. And so when I start feeling that way, I want to allow that to come up and feel it and get curious about it, as opposed to, whoa, no, go away. I'll tell you what, I'm going to like look at my email now. Just don't feel that, right? Or I'll go outside instead of like feeling pressure and feeling this like achiever energy. I got to accomplish things. As soon as I feel that like default pattern coming up, I'll just put my hands on my computer, few deep breaths. I'll go outside. I'll just watch the clouds go by, and I'll intentionally slow myself down and become aware and do a body scan. Go, okay, how am I feeling? What does that mean to me? And I'll just go, hey, like you're allowed to feel that way. Like I'll say
Mhm.
that to myself. I'll coach myself. I'm allowed to feel lonely today. I'm allowed to feel sad. That is completely fine. And that's unconditional love. I was very conditional with myself, and there's a lot of patterns that my parents had with me, and that's specifically like my dad, I'll say. And it's not, that's just, I have no ill will towards him. My dad's passed away now, and like that's the way he was raised. I have no ill will towards him. All I'm doing is I'm identifying the patterns and conditions that I had in childhood that have echoed into my adulthood, and realizing they aren't serving me, and now just reframing it, becoming aware of it, and just practicing uh, doing something different, right? And so, the more work and the deeper that I go on myself, I am then able to work with clients that way. And I truly feel that way. I feel like a fraud, and that's where the imposter syndrome would come up. If I haven't done the work on myself, and I can only coach as deep as I have gone myself, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
Mhm.
that's yeah, kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, all that I completely resonate with all that too, and I totally understand where you're coming from for sure. Um, I guess I'm kind of running out of time here
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
Zoom call, so that's my apologies. I just saw the timer at the top.
No, all good.
But I did want to thank you for coming on, and
Yeah, man.
I really appreciate everything you have to say, the path that you've chosen and the programs that you have going on right now. I think they're amazing, and I think they're going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, Braden, I got a lot of respect for you and your recovery and the way that you're approaching the recovery, and just putting yourself out there in such a authentic way. And I very much enjoying watching you build up this brand in real time, and celebrating the wins is so refreshing to see. Like you're putting it out there in a very non-braggadocious way. You're just like, hey, look, like this is working. And so I got a lot of respect for you for doing that, and I'm totally looking forward to having you on my show, and hearing your story as well. Having said that, thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, I really appreciate it, man, and I'm definitely looking forward to coming onto your show. And yeah, no, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds great.